I adjusted my blazer as I stood in the gleaming lobby of Bellamy's department store corporate headquarters, the company logo's soft lighting reflecting off the marble floors. The same logo that had appeared on my mother-in-law Barbara's paycheck, stubs for the past 15 years, and would now appear with my signature at the bottom. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My handcrafted business card, embossed with the Pure Petal Skincare logo, felt heavy in my pocket as I watched executives in tailored suits hurry past, none recognizing the woman who was about to change everything. 3 years ago, Barbara had laughed at my little hobby across her perfectly set Thanksgiving dinner table. Today, as the new owner of Bellamy's parent company, I was about to address their annual staff meeting, with my mother-in-law sitting in the front row, completely unaware that her career now rested in my hands. The conference room doors hadn't opened yet, giving me a moment to reflect on the journey that had led me here. Through the glass walls, I could see Barbara arranging materials at her reserved seat, her silver blonde hair pulled into the same severe bun she'd worn at every family gathering where she'd questioned my choices, my ambitions, and especially my small business. She looked exactly as she had that Thanksgiving night in Riverside, when everything changed. It had been a crisp November evening, the kind where fallen leaves crunched underfoot and chimney smoke hung in the air. Mark and I had arrived at his mother's immaculate suburban home, my arms carefully balancing 3 containers of homemade pumpkin pie, and a small gift bag containing samples of my newly formulated lavender face cream. "You're late," Barbara had said by way of greeting, her eyes flicking briefly to my containers with thinly veiled suspicion. "Everyone's already here." Mark squeezed my hand reassuringly before kissing his mother's cheek. "Traffic from Columbus was terrible, Mom, but we made it, and Rachel brought dessert." Barbara's perfectly lined lips twitched. "I already ordered pies from Hartfield's bakery, but I suppose we can put these on the side table." I swallowed my disappointment as she took the containers and handed them to her housekeeper without another word. This was nothing new. Barbara had been dismissing my efforts since Mark and I had started dating 5 years earlier. I'd hoped that 2 years of marriage might have softened her stance, but her resistance to accepting me seemed only to have hardened over time. "I also brought you something," I said, offering the small gift bag. "It's from my new skincare line. I just finalized the formula last week." Barbara's eyebrows rose fractionally as she peered into the bag. "Oh, how crafty of you, Rachel." "It's actually more than a craft," Mark interjected. "Rachel's been developing these products for over a year. They're really special." "I'm sure they are, dear," Barbara said, setting the bag aside without removing the jar. "Now, come say hello to everyone. Diane from the store is here. You remember her. She's our cosmetics buyer." My stomach tightened at the mention of Diane Peterson. I'd met her once before at a department store charity event where she'd spent 10 minutes explaining why small beauty brands were quaint, but ultimately futile. The prospect of enduring an entire Thanksgiving dinner with both Barbara and Diane filled me with dread. The dining room was a showcase of Barbara's exacting standards, crystal glasses catching the light from the chandelier, fine china placed with mathematical precision, and floral arrangements that looked professionally designed. Guests were already seated, their conversations pausing briefly as we entered. "Finally!" Barbara announced with a light laugh. "My son and his wife have arrived. For those who haven't met her, this is Rachel. She's between jobs at the moment." The familiar heat of embarrassment crept up my neck. "Actually, I left my marketing position at Greenway Advertising to start my own business," I corrected, gently. "I create organic skincare products." "How lovely," Diane commented with the same tone one might use to address a child's lemonade stand. "Homemade beauty products are quite trendy with the DIY crowd these days." "They're professionally formulated," I explained, trying to keep my voice steady. I worked with a cosmetic chemist to develop preservative-free formulations using local ingredients. Barbara sighed audibly as she took her seat at the head of the table. Rachel's always been creative with her little projects. Mark, darling, sit here next to Diane. I'm sure you two have plenty to catch up on. I found myself placed at the opposite end of the table from my husband, wedged between Barbara's neighbor and her accountant, both strangers to me. As the meal progressed, I tried repeatedly to join the main conversation, only to find the topic shifted whenever I contributed. It wasn't until dessert, Hartfield's pumpkin pie served while my containers remained untouched on the side table, that the conversation turned directly to my business. So, Rachel, Diane said, swirling her wine glass, Barbara mentions you've left a real career to make face creams in your kitchen. That must be fulfilling. Before I could respond, Barbara interjected, I keep telling Mark that Trust Bank is looking for marketing people. I play bridge with the regional manager's wife. One word from me, and Rachel could have a proper job again. I appreciate the thought, I said carefully, but Pure Petal Skincare is a proper job. I've already secured spots in 3 local boutiques, and my online sales are growing steadily. Barbara exchanged a knowing glance with Diane. Darling, playing with essential oils is a lovely hobby, but it's not a career. At Bellamy's, we work with real beauty brands that have laboratories and marketing departments and distribution networks. Mom, Mark warned, but Barbara continued, I'm only being realistic. Do you know how many small beauty brands launch every year? Thousands. And do you know how many survive past the first year? Almost none. She turned to Diane. Tell her, Diane, you're the expert. Diane set down her fork with the practiced precision of someone who enjoyed being asked to speak from authority. The beauty industry is brutally competitive. The brands we carry at Bellamy's invest millions in research and marketing. They have teams of scientists, not homemakers mixing ingredients in their garage. My garage workshop with its carefully organized supplies and equipment, purchased with my entire savings, flashed in my mind. The long nights researching formulations, the spreadsheets tracking costs and projections, the certification courses I'd completed, all dismissed in a single sentence. Actually, I said, my voice quieter than intended, many successful beauty brands started exactly that way, with someone who saw a need and created a solution. Barbara patted my hand condescendingly. Of course they did, dear. But those were different times, and those were different people. I just don't want you to be disappointed when reality sets in. What reality is that? I asked, unable to keep the edge from my voice. That some people are built for success, and others? She glanced around the table, lowering her voice as if sharing a confidence. Aren't. It's nothing to be ashamed of. We all have different capacities. The table fell uncomfortably silent. Mark's face had flushed red. Whether from embarrassment, at my behalf, or anger at his mother, I couldn't tell. I should check on those pies you brought, Barbara said abruptly, rising from her chair. Susanna might need help in the kitchen. As she left, Mark moved to the empty chair beside me. I'm sorry, he whispered. You know how she gets. But I was barely listening. Something had crystallized in that moment, a realization that no matter what I achieved, Barbara would never see me as worthy. And more importantly, I understood that her opinion had been shaping my own perception of my business, keeping me cautious and small. Mom's old school, Mark continued. She doesn't understand startups or entrepreneurship. Her entire career has been at Bellamy's, working her way up from sales clerk to department manager. She measures success differently. I nodded, but my mind was racing ahead. If Barbara and Diane represented the gatekeepers of the beauty industry, the ones who decided which products deserved shelf space and consumer attention, then I needed to find a way around them, not through them. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The drive home from Riverside to our small Columbus apartment was quiet. Mark apologized several more times, but I barely registered his words. By the time we pulled into our parking space, the humiliation had transformed into something harder and more useful: determination. "I'm going to succeed," I said suddenly, interrupting Mark's concerned monologue about possibly skipping Christmas at his mother's. "Not to prove anything to Barbara, but because I believe in what I'm creating." Mark turned off the engine and faced me. "I know you will. Your products are amazing. But they could be better," I admitted. "And the business needs structure, real marketing, proper distribution channels." I pulled out my phone and opened my notes app. I've been playing it safe, treating this like a side project instead of committing fully. "What are you thinking?" Mark asked, his expression shifting from concern to curiosity. "I need to talk to someone who's done this before." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Someone who understands how to scale a beauty brand from the ground up. I typed quickly, making a list. And I need to understand exactly how the big retailers operate: their margins, their purchasing cycles, their decision-making process. "Diane might actually be helpful there," Mark suggested tentatively. I shook my head. "Diane sees what Barbara wants her to see. I need someone who recognizes potential when it's still raw." That night, while Mark slept, I sat at our small kitchen table with my laptop, researching successful beauty entrepreneurs. One name kept appearing in local business articles: Olivia Martinez, founder of Botanical Beauty, which she'd sold to a major corporation 5 years earlier. According to her LinkedIn profile, she now mentored female entrepreneurs and occasionally invested in promising startups. By dawn, I had drafted an email to Olivia, created a comprehensive business plan, and reorganized my entire approach to Pure Petal. The kitchen table was covered with spreadsheets, ingredient lists, and marketing concepts. When Mark emerged from the bedroom, rubbing sleep from his eyes, he stopped short at the sight. "Have you been up all night?" he asked, surveying the papers. "I think I just wrote the next chapter of my life," I replied, gesturing to the laptop screen where my email to Olivia Martinez awaited sending. My finger hovered over the touchpad. "What do you think? Too desperate?" Mark leaned over my shoulder, reading the carefully crafted message in which I detailed my business concept, acknowledged my current limitations, and asked for 20 minutes of her time. "It's perfect," he said. "Send it before you overthink." I clicked send, then immediately panicked. She'll never respond. Why would someone like Olivia Martinez give me the time of day? "Because she'll see what I see," Mark said, kissing the top of my head. "Someone with vision and determination who just needs the right guidance." Surprisingly, Olivia responded that same afternoon, agreeing to meet me at a small coffee shop in the Arts District the following week. The days until our meeting passed in a blur of preparation, refining my business plan, organizing financial projections, and preparing samples of my 3 core products. The coffee shop was busier than I expected, filled with artists and professionals from the surrounding studios. Olivia was easy to spot, a confident woman in her 50s with silver-streaked dark hair and sharp eyes that seemed to evaluate everything they landed on. When those eyes turned to me, I felt simultaneously nervous and reassured. "So," she said, after we'd exchanged greetings and settled at a corner table, "tell me why you're creating yet another beauty brand in an oversaturated market." It wasn't the warm, encouraging opening I'd hoped for, but her directness was refreshing after Barbara's passive-aggressive dismissals. "Because the market only seems saturated," I replied. "There's actually a significant gap between mass-produced synthetic products and high-end luxury brands. Mid-range, truly natural products with scientifically proven ingredients are still relatively rare." Olivia's expression remained neutral, but she nodded slightly. Go on. For the next 15 minutes, I outlined my vision for Pure Petal. Products formulated with locally sourced botanical ingredients, sustainable packaging, and transparent manufacturing processes. I explained the research behind each formulation and my plans for expansion beyond skincare into hair and body products. Your concept is solid, Olivia said when I finished. But concepts are easy. Execution is hard. What's your manufacturing strategy when orders increase beyond what you can produce in your garage? I slid a paper across the table. I've identified 3 contract manufacturers specializing in small batch natural products. This one in Cincinnati could handle production up to 10,000 units monthly while maintaining my quality standards. Distribution? Direct to consumer through my website initially, expanding to select boutiques within 6 months. I've already secured placement in 3 local shops, and I'm in discussions with a regional beauty subscription box. Olivia reached for the samples I'd brought. She opened each one, testing textures and scents with the practiced movements of someone who had evaluated countless products. The formulations are good, not revolutionary, but solid. Your packaging needs work. It doesn't convey the quality of what's inside. I pulled out another folder. I've been working with a graphic designer on a rebranding. These are the concepts. For the next hour, Olivia interrogated every aspect of my business: finances, marketing, long-term vision. Her questions were tough but fair, pushing me to articulate things I hadn't fully considered. By the end of our meeting, I felt intellectually drained but strangely energized. You've done more homework than most startups I meet, she said finally. But you're still thinking too small. This isn't just about creating good products. It's about building a brand with staying power. That requires more capital than you currently have. My heart sank. I've approached 3 banks. They all said I need a longer track record before they'd consider a business loan. Banks aren't your answer right now, Olivia said, gathering her things. You need angel investors who understand the beauty space. I'm hosting a pitch event next month. Prepare a 5-minute presentation and I'll put you on the schedule. Really? I couldn't hide my surprise. Just like that? Nothing is just like that in this business, she replied with a slight smile. Getting to pitch doesn't guarantee investment, but you've earned the opportunity to try. She stood to leave, then paused. One more thing. That doubt in your voice when you talk about certain aspects of your business. Get rid of it. Confidence sells more products than any ingredient ever could. As I watched her navigate through the busy coffee shop, I felt something shift inside me, a strengthening of resolve, a clarifying of purpose. I pulled out my phone and texted Mark. She's giving me a chance to pitch to investors next month. His reply came immediately. I knew she would. This is just the beginning. On the drive home, I took a detour past Bellamy's department store. The massive retail space occupied prime real estate in Columbus's shopping district, its windows displaying luxurious cosmetics with elegant models promising transformation in a bottle. For 15 years, Barbara had worked her way up to manage the cosmetics department, and her identity was thoroughly enmeshed with the Bellamy's brand. She measured her worth by her position there, and perhaps that explained her dismissal of my own venture. Anything outside the corporate structure she understood felt threatening to her worldview. I parked across the street, watching customers enter and exit with branded shopping bags. Somewhere inside, Barbara was likely instructing her staff, arranging displays of products virtually identical to those sold by a dozen other department stores. Products made by huge corporations with massive marketing budgets, designed to create insecurities and then offer solutions in pretty packages. I don't want to compete with them, I realized, speaking aloud in my empty car. I want to change them. The month before Olivia's investor event passed in a whirlwind of activity. I completely overhauled my packaging with the help of the graphic designer, creating a minimalist aesthetic that conveyed both luxury and sustainability. I refined my formulations with feedback from focus groups organized through local women's business networks. I practiced my pitch until Mark could recite it from memory. When the day arrived, I stood in the wings of a small auditorium at the Columbus Business Innovation Center, listening as other entrepreneurs presented their concepts to a room of 40 potential investors. Most were tech startups or food businesses, making Pure Petal the only beauty brand on the schedule. Our next presenter is Rachel Wilson, founder of Pure Petal Skincare, the moderator announced. As I walked onto the stage, I caught sight of Olivia in the third row, her expression encouraging but neutral. Beside her sat several serious-looking individuals with tablets and notebooks, the investors who could change everything. 3 years ago, I began, I developed a severe reaction to a luxury face cream purchased from a high-end department store. When I researched the ingredients, I discovered synthetic compounds, hidden fragrances, and known irritants, all concealed behind marketing terms like natural-inspired and botanical complex. I paused, making eye contact with several audience members. That experience led me to create Pure Petal Skincare, truly natural, scientifically formulated products for people who want effective skincare without harmful ingredients. But Pure Petal isn't just another clean beauty brand. We're building a transparency revolution in an industry built on secrets and pseudoscience. For 5 minutes, I outlined the market opportunity, my unique approach, and the growth potential. I finished by revealing our early sales figures, modest, but showing an impressive 30% month-over-month growth, and my vision for expanding beyond direct-to-consumer into selective retail partnerships. We're seeking $150,000 in seed funding to scale production, enhance our digital marketing, and expand our product line from 3 to 8 core offerings. With this investment, we project reaching $500,000 in annual revenue within 18 months. The questions afterward were pointed but engaged. When I stepped off stage, Olivia gave me a subtle thumbs up, and I knew I'd done well. Later that evening, as investors mingled with presenters over wine and appetizers, I found myself surrounded by interested parties. One in particular, Jason Kim from Evergreen Ventures, seemed especially engaged with my vision. The beauty industry is ripe for disruption, he said, examining my product samples. The old guard, department stores like Bellamy's, they're dinosaurs waiting for the meteor. They've lost touch with what modern consumers want. I thought of Barbara and her dismissive attitude. They still have significant market share, I pointed out. For now, Jason agreed. But they're vulnerable. Their overhead is massive, their buying decisions are slow, and they're wedded to brands that aren't evolving quickly enough. Direct-to-consumer brands like yours are the future. By the end of the evening, Jason had offered to invest $100,000 for a 15% equity stake in Pure Petal, with the possibility of additional funding as we hit growth milestones. 2 other investors expressed serious interest as well, bringing the potential seed round to $175,000, more than I'd hoped for. As Mark and I drove home that night, the reality of what had happened began to sink in. "We're really doing this," I said, my voice filled with wonder. "This is really happening." Mark reached over to squeeze my hand. "Did you ever doubt it?" "Constantly," I admitted. "Especially after every conversation with your mother." His expression darkened slightly. "Mom doesn't understand businesses like yours. She's from a different era." "It's not just that," I said. "She fundamentally doesn't believe in me. She never has." "Then she's missing out," Mark replied simply. "Because from where I'm sitting, you're unstoppable." "Banks aren't your answer. Right now," Olivia said, collecting her portfolio. "You need angel investors who understand the beauty space. I'm hosting a pitch event next month. 10 companies, 5 minutes each. Come prepared." The words hung in the air between us, an unexpected lifeline. I tried to maintain my composure, but my voice betrayed my excitement. "You want me to pitch at your event?" "I want to see if you can handle it," she corrected, her expression serious. This isn't charity, Rachel. I only invite founders I believe have potential. Don't make me regret it. As she left the coffee shop, I remained seated, processing what had just happened. One meeting had transformed Pure Petal from a side hustle into a legitimate startup with investor potential. I texted Mark immediately. She's giving me a chance to pitch, 1 month to prepare. His response came quickly. I never doubted it. Let's celebrate tonight. But celebration would have to wait. I had a pitch to build, a brand to refine, and precious little time. The next 4 weeks passed in a blur of activity. I reworked my business plan, finalized new packaging designs, and practiced my presentation relentlessly. Mark filmed me on his phone each night, and we analyzed my delivery, down to the smallest gesture. 2 weeks before the pitch event, Barbara called to invite us to dinner. Diane has some exciting news, she explained, her voice laced with satisfaction. And she specifically asked if you'd be there, Rachel. My stomach tightened. What kind of news? You'll find out when you get here, Barbara replied with obvious pleasure at withholding information. Saturday at 7. Don't be late. After hanging up, I turned to Mark. Your mother's planning something. He sighed. Do you want to skip it? We could say you're busy with pitch preparations. Part of me wanted to avoid another uncomfortable evening, but curiosity won out. No, I think we should go. Whatever Diane's news is, it might be useful to know. Saturday arrived with unseasonable warmth for April. We pulled up to Barbara's house precisely at 7, determined to give her no reason for complaint. She greeted us at the door with uncharacteristic enthusiasm. There you are, she exclaimed, ushering us inside. Diane just arrived. We're having drinks on the patio. The backyard had been transformed since Thanksgiving. Spring flowers bloomed in carefully arranged beds, and new outdoor furniture created an elegant entertainment space. Diane sat on a cushioned chair, looking pleased with herself, while 2 men I didn't recognize stood nearby holding cocktails. Rachel, Mark, Diane called out. Perfect timing. I was just about to share my news. Barbara handed us each a glass of wine. Diane has been promoted, she announced, unable to contain herself. Tell them, Diane. Diane straightened in her chair, savoring the moment. I've been named Director of Beauty Acquisitions for all Bellamy stores nationwide. I'll be overseeing the entire cosmetics purchasing strategy, effective next month. That's wonderful, Mark said politely. Congratulations. Thank you, Diane replied, her gaze shifting to me. But that's not all. I'm implementing a new initiative to feature emerging brands in our stores. We're calling it the Next Face of Beauty. My pulse quickened. Was this why I'd been invited? Had Barbara actually mentioned Pure Petal to Diane? It's a competition, Diane continued. 20 small beauty brands will be selected for a special showcase at our flagship stores. The top performer gets a permanent contract with Bellamy's nationwide. That sounds like an amazing opportunity, I said carefully. It is, Barbara interjected. And Diane thought of you immediately. Diane nodded, smiling. We need someone to help coordinate the logistics, tracking sales data, arranging the displays, communicating with the selected brands. Barbara mentioned you have marketing experience and some knowledge of beauty products. It would be part-time, perfect for someone between careers. The realization hit me like a slap. They weren't offering Pure Petal a spot in the competition. They were offering me a job as Diane's assistant. She's not interested, Mark said flatly before I could respond. Barbara's expression hardened. Mark, let Rachel speak for herself. This is a wonderful opportunity for her to get back into a real workplace. Actually, I said, finding my voice, Pure Petal is my workplace now, and we're preparing for significant expansion in the coming months. Diane raised an eyebrow. Expansion? How interesting. Into what exactly? More farmers markets? "We're finalizing our funding round," I replied, the half-truth slipping out before I could stop myself. "And we're in discussions with several retail partners." Barbara exchanged a glance with Diane. "Rachel, be reasonable. This position would give you stability while you figure things out. No one expects these little kitchen projects to become real businesses." One of the men who had been silent until now cleared his throat. "What exactly is Pure Petal?" he asked, his tone genuinely curious rather than dismissive. Before Barbara could interject, I turned to him. "We're a clean beauty brand focused on botanical ingredients and sustainable formulations. We launched with 3 core products and have plans to expand to a full skincare line by year's end." "Interesting," he said. "I'm Tom Reeves, by the way. I run product development for Luxe Glow Beauty." My breath caught. Luxe Glow was one of the fastest-growing prestige beauty brands in the country, recently acquired by a major conglomerate for a reported $200 million. And its product development director was standing in Barbara's backyard. "Rachel's being modest," Mark said, stepping closer. "Pure Petal has a 40% reorder rate and has already been picked up by several boutiques. Her lavender night cream has developed something of a cult following." Tom's interest visibly increased. "Really? What's your preservative system? That's always the challenge with natural formulations." For the next 15 minutes, Tom and I discussed technical aspects of formulation chemistry, while Diane and Barbara exchanged increasingly uncomfortable glances. The second man, who introduced himself as Tom's husband, joined the conversation with thoughtful questions about branding and market positioning. "You know," Tom said finally, "you should submit for our accelerator program. It's for early-stage beauty brands with high growth potential. The application deadline is next Friday." "I didn't know Luxe Glow had an accelerator," I replied, genuinely surprised. "It's new. 6 brands, 3 months of mentorship, potential investment at the end for the most promising concepts. Here's my card. Email me your details and I'll send you the application link." Barbara interrupted, her voice tight. "Diane, tell everyone about the new spring campaign you've developed. It's so clever." The conversation shifted, but I remained aware of Tom watching me with professional interest. When we left 2 hours later, he shook my hand warmly. "I look forward to seeing your application, Rachel. Don't miss the deadline." In the car, Mark couldn't contain his laughter. "Did you see Mom's face when Tom started taking you seriously? I thought she might spontaneously combust." "I can't believe that just happened," I said, staring at Tom's business card. "Luxe Glow's accelerator could be even better than finding angel investors." "Apply to both," Mark suggested. "The pitch event is in 2 weeks, and Luxe Glow's deadline is next Friday. Keep all options open." The next week passed in a frenzy of activity as I prepared both my investor pitch and the accelerator application. The Luxe Glow submission required detailed information about formulations, sales history, and growth projections, exactly the materials I'd already organized for Olivia's event. Friday afternoon, just before the accelerator deadline, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Rachel Wilson? This is Tom Reeves from Luxe Glow. I wanted to check if you're submitting your application today." Surprised by the personal follow-up, I replied, "Yes, I'm finalizing it now. It'll be in before the 5 p.m. deadline." "Excellent. Listen, I shouldn't say this, but I reviewed your Instagram and website. Your aesthetic and formulation philosophy align perfectly with what we're looking for. Make sure you emphasize your botanical sourcing in the application. That's a key differentiator." "Thank you," I said, stunned by his candor. "That's incredibly helpful." After submitting the application, I refocused on the investor pitch. The event was now just 1 week away, and while I'd practiced extensively, I still felt unprepared. What if the investors asked questions I couldn't answer? What if they dismissed Pure Petal as just another beauty startup with no unique selling proposition? The night before the pitch event, my phone buzzed with an email notification. The subject line read, "Luxe Glow Beauty Accelerator. Application status. My hand trembled as I opened it, expecting the standard "Thank you for applying" form letter. Instead, I read, "Dear Rachel, congratulations. After careful review, Pure Petal Skincare has been selected as one of 6 brands for the inaugural Luxe Glow Beauty Accelerator program. Your unique approach to botanical formulations and clear brand vision stood out among hundreds of applicants. The program begins May 15th with a welcome reception at our Columbus Innovation Center. Please confirm your participation by responding to this email. Best regards, Tom Reeves, Director of Product Development, Luxe Glow Beauty." I screamed loud enough to bring Mark running from the shower, towel wrapped around his waist, water still dripping from his hair. "What happened? Are you okay?" Wordlessly, I handed him my phone. His eyes widened as he read. Then he wrapped me in a damp hug, lifting me off the ground. "You did it! This is huge, Rachel!" "I can't believe it," I whispered, the reality slowly sinking in. Out of hundreds of applicants. "I can believe it," Mark said firmly. "Your products are exceptional, and now the industry is finally noticing." The investor pitch the next day took on a different energy with the Luxe Glow acceptance in my pocket. I stood before the room of potential investors with newfound confidence, knowing that industry experts had already validated my concept. "Pure Petal isn't just another clean beauty brand," I began, my voice steady. "We're creating a new category at the intersection of botanical science and consumer transparency. Our initial 3 products have generated $78,000 in revenue over the past 9 months, with a 40% reorder rate and 0 marketing spend." The presentation flowed smoothly, culminating in my funding request, $200,000 for manufacturing scale-up, expanded product development, and strategic marketing. When I mentioned the Luxe Glow Accelerator acceptance, I saw several investors lean forward with increased interest. The Q&A session was rigorous but positive. By the evening's end, 3 investors had requested follow-up meetings, and Olivia herself pulled me aside. "You've come a long way since our coffee shop conversation," she observed. "The Luxe Glow selection changes your trajectory significantly. Are you still interested in angel investment, or are you holding out for potential accelerator funding?" "I'm exploring all options," I replied honestly. "The accelerator doesn't guarantee investment, just mentorship and exposure." "Smart. Keep your next meeting with Edison Ventures. Brian Edison has funded 3 successful beauty startups. He knows the industry inside and out." The following weeks were a whirlwind. I began the Luxe Glow Accelerator program while simultaneously negotiating with Brian Edison, who offered $250,000 for a 15% equity stake in Pure Petal, more capital than I'd initially sought, with better terms. The accelerator program itself was transformative. Twice weekly, we worked with industry experts on everything from scaling production to retail strategy. Tom became something of a mentor, offering insights on formulation challenges and manufacturing relationships. By the end of the first month, I had secured a contract manufacturer capable of producing 50,000 units monthly and had expanded the product line from 3 items to 7. Mark supported me through the chaotic schedule, often bringing dinner to the Innovation Center when sessions ran late. Occasionally, he'd mention his mother's latest comments about my little project, but we both found them more amusing than hurtful now. Barbara had no idea what was happening with Pure Petal, and we decided to keep it that way until everything was finalized. The accelerator culminated in a showcase event where each brand presented their products to retail buyers, beauty editors, and potential investors. Pure Petal's booth, professionally designed with the new branding, attracted consistent traffic throughout the day. By closing, I had verbal commitments from 2 major online beauty retailers and a potential distribution deal in Japan. Tom found me as I was packing up display samples. "Congratulations, you were the star of the showcase." "Thank you," I replied, still processing the day's success. None of this would have happened without your support. That's not true. You had the foundation. All you needed was the right platform to build on. He paused, looking uncharacteristically hesitant. I have something to discuss with you. LuxGlow's parent company, Willow Tree Holdings, is creating a new division focused on clean beauty acquisitions. We're looking for brands with proven concepts, but not yet at national scale. Brands exactly like Pure Petal. My heart raced. Are you saying what I think you're saying? We'd like to make you an offer. Not to acquire Pure Petal outright, but to form a strategic partnership. Willow Tree would invest $2 million for a 30% stake, with additional funding tied to performance milestones. You'd maintain control of product development and brand direction, while gaining access to our manufacturing, distribution, and marketing infrastructure. The figure was staggering, far beyond what I'd imagined possible at this stage. I'd need to discuss this with my existing investor, I said, thinking of Brian Edison. Of course, we can set up a formal presentation next week, but there's something else. Tom lowered his voice slightly. This is confidential, but Willow Tree is in late-stage acquisition talks with Bellamy's department stores. The deal should close within 60 days. My mind raced to connect the dots. Bellamy's? The entire chain? Yes. They're struggling financially but have valuable real estate and customer relationships. Our strategy is to revitalize their beauty departments with exclusive brands and elevated experiences. Pure Petal would be featured prominently in the relaunch. The irony was almost too perfect. Barbara's employer, her identity for 15 years, would soon be owned by the company offering to invest in the business she had repeatedly dismissed. I'm definitely interested, I said carefully, but I'll need to review the details with my advisors. Absolutely. One more thing. If we move forward, we'd want you to take an active role in the beauty department redesign across all Bellamy's locations. Your perspective as both a brand founder and a product formulator would be invaluable. Tom handed me a folder. Here's an overview of the partnership structure. Let's meet next Wednesday to discuss. That night, I shared everything with Mark, whose initial excitement turned to thoughtful consideration as he processed the Bellamy's connection. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? He asked finally. That your mother might soon technically be working for me? The thought did cross my mind. He shook his head, smiling slightly. How are you going to handle that? She still has no idea about any of this. I considered the question carefully. I think it depends on the final structure. If the deal goes through, I'll be a partner with Willow Tree, not Barbara's direct boss. But yes, Pure Petal would become a significant brand within her department. She's going to lose her mind, Mark said, his expression a mix of concern and amusement. Maybe. Or maybe she'll finally see that I built something real. I paused, realizing something important. But that's not why I'm doing this. This partnership makes sense for Pure Petal, regardless of Barbara's involvement. The meeting with Willow Tree the following Wednesday exceeded all expectations. The $2 million investment came with minimal strings attached, and the growth projections were aggressive but achievable. Brian Edison, included in the discussions, recommended accepting the offer while negotiating for additional performance incentives. By the end of May, the paperwork was signed. Pure Petal had secured major investment, a national retail platform, and a clear path to becoming a leading clean beauty brand. Throughout the process, we maintained complete confidentiality about the Bellamy's acquisition, a standard requirement in corporate deals of this magnitude. June brought manufacturing scale-up, new product development, and the first whispers of the Bellamy's acquisition in industry publications. Speculation about the struggling department store's future circulated in business news, but no official announcement had been made. In mid-July, Mark received a text from his mother. Having a small dinner this Saturday. Please come. Need to discuss some things. Diane will be there. Should we go? he asked, showing me the message. Definitely, I replied without hesitation. I think we're about to find out what's happening with Bellamy's internally. Barbara's home was subdued when we arrived Saturday evening. Gone were the elaborate floral arrangements and carefully curated place settings. Instead, the dining table was set simply, and Barbara herself looked tired, the usual perfect composure slightly frayed at the edges. "Thank you for coming," she said, her typical sharpness noticeably absent. "Diane will be here shortly." Mark squeezed his mother's shoulder. "Everything okay, Mom?" "Just workplace stress," she replied vaguely. "Retail is challenging these days." Diane arrived 10 minutes later, her expression grim. After minimal small talk, Barbara served a simple dinner of store-bought lasagna, a far cry from her usual elaborate meals. Halfway through dinner, Diane set down her fork with an abrupt gesture. "There's no point prolonging this. The rumors are true. Bellamy's is being acquired." Barbara's hand trembled slightly as she reached for her wine glass. "Nothing's been officially announced. It will be on Monday," Diane continued. "Willow Tree Holdings is purchasing Bellamy's. The deal closes in 3 weeks." Mark glanced at me, and I gave an imperceptible nod. We had both signed NDAs regarding the acquisition, but now that Diane had confirmed it publicly, we could engage in the conversation. "What does this mean for your positions?" Mark asked. Barbara stared at her plate. "We don't know. That's what's so maddening. No information has been shared about restructuring or staffing changes." "Willow Tree is a beauty conglomerate," Diane added, her voice tight. "They own Luxe Glow and several other brands. Word is they're planning to completely overhaul the cosmetics departments and bring in their own products." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said carefully. "It must be stressful." Barbara looked up, seeming to notice me properly for the first time that evening. "How's your skin cream thing going?" The dismissive phrasing was so familiar it almost made me smile. "It's going well. We've expanded quite a bit recently." "That's nice," she replied absently, clearly more concerned with her own situation. "Diane and I may need to look for new positions soon. At our age, that's not easy." "I'm sure any company would be lucky to have your experience," I offered sincerely. The dinner concluded early, with Barbara and Diane's anxiety casting a pall over the evening. As we drove home, Mark was unusually quiet. "What are you thinking?" I asked finally. "I'm thinking about how many times my mother has dismissed your business, and now her future is uncertain while yours is thriving." He glanced at me. "There's some irony there." "There's more irony than you know," I replied. "Part of my role in the partnership is helping redesign the beauty departments across all Bellamy's stores." Mark's eyes widened. "You're going to be directly involved in reshaping her workplace?" "Potentially, yes. The first planning meeting is next Thursday." That Thursday, I entered Willow Tree's Columbus office for the Bellamy's integration kickoff. The boardroom was filled with executives from both companies, including Tom and several Bellamy's department managers from across the country. I recognized Diane sitting stiffly near the middle of the table, but didn't see Barbara. Tom opened the meeting by introducing the key members of the transition team. And finally, Rachel Wilson, founder of Pure Petal Skincare. Rachel will be leading product curation for our renewed beauty departments, with a focus on clean and sustainable brands. Her expertise in both formulation science and consumer preferences makes her uniquely qualified to help reimagine the Bellamy's beauty experience. Diane's head snapped up, her eyes locking onto mine with stunned recognition. I smiled politely and took my designated seat at the table. The meeting proceeded with detailed presentations about the acquisition timeline, rebranding strategies, and departmental restructuring. When discussion turned to the beauty department renovations, Tom invited me to present the initial concept boards. Our research shows that Bellamy's customers are increasingly interested in clean, sustainable beauty products. But the current offerings don't meet those demands, I began, advancing through slides showing the proposed new layout and brand mix. We'll be featuring several Willow Tree portfolio brands, including Luxe Glow and Pure Petal, alongside carefully selected external partners who meet our ingredient and sustainability standards. As I spoke, I noticed Diane frantically typing on her phone beneath the table. By the presentation's end, she was visibly pale. During the coffee break, she cornered me by the refreshment table. "What is happening here?" she demanded in a harsh whisper. "How are you involved in this?" Pure Petal entered a strategic partnership with Willow Tree last month, I explained calmly. My role includes helping with the Bellamy's beauty department redesign. "This is unbelievable," she muttered. "Does Barbara know?" "Not yet, but I'm looking forward to working with the cosmetics teams across all locations. There's a great opportunity to elevate the customer experience." Diane started to respond, then stopped as Tom approached. "Rachel, the CEO wants to discuss the flagship store concept in more detail. Can you join us?" As I walked away, I heard Diane's voice behind me. "We need to talk after this meeting." That talk never happened. Diane left immediately after the session ended, avoiding eye contact as she hurried out. The following morning, my phone rang with Barbara's number displayed on the screen. "Rachel," she said without preamble, her voice tight. "I need to understand what's happening. Diane says you're somehow involved with Willow Tree's acquisition of Bellamy's?" "Yes, that's correct. Pure Petal formed a partnership with Willow Tree recently." A long silence followed. "And your skincare business is now part of a major beauty conglomerate?" "We maintain independent operations, but yes, Willow Tree holds a significant investment stake in Pure Petal." Another pause. "I see. And will you be making decisions about staffing in the cosmetics departments?" The vulnerability in her question was so unlike Barbara that it momentarily caught me off guard. "Personnel decisions aren't part of my role. I'm focused on product selection and department design. I've been at Bellamy's for 15 years, she said, her voice uncharacteristically small. "This department is my life's work." For the first time, I felt a glimmer of empathy for Barbara. Her identity was so thoroughly entwined with her position that the prospect of change threatened her sense of self. "The acquisition doesn't mean everyone will be replaced," I said gently. "In fact, experienced managers with customer relationships are valuable during transitions like this." "Would you put in a word for me?" The request clearly cost her considerable pride. "I'll make sure the transition team understands the value of retaining experienced department managers," I replied carefully. "But Barbara, I think you should know that the new direction emphasizes clean beauty brands and sustainability, exactly the approach you criticized when I started Pure Petal." The line went quiet for so long I thought she might have hung up. Finally, she sighed. "I may have been hasty in my assessment of market trends." Coming from Barbara, this was tantamount to a full apology. "The beauty industry is evolving rapidly," I acknowledged, "but that creates opportunities for those willing to adapt. Could we meet to discuss these changes more thoroughly?" We arranged to meet for coffee the following afternoon. When I arrived at the cafe, I found Barbara already seated, a folder of papers neatly arranged before her. She had applied her makeup with typical precision, but fine lines of strain showed around her eyes. "Thank you for coming," she said formally, as I sat across from her. "Of course." She took a deep breath. "I've prepared some thoughts on how the cosmetics department could evolve to better showcase clean beauty brands." She slid the folder toward me. "I've been researching the category extensively since our conversation yesterday." Opening the folder, I found detailed notes on clean beauty trends, sustainability practices, and even specific brands that fit the emerging criteria. The thoroughness was impressive, especially given the short time frame. You've done considerable research, I observed. I've worked in beauty retail for nearly 2 decades. I know how to spot trends and adapt quickly. Her expression softened slightly. What I failed to recognize was that your vision for Pure Petal was ahead of the market curve, not behind it. The admission clearly cost her, but Barbara had always been pragmatic above all else. If adapting her perspective meant preserving her position, she would adapt. The new direction for Bellamy's beauty departments aligns closely with Pure Petal's philosophy, I acknowledged. Transparency, sustainability, and proven efficacy. Exactly the values I've outlined here, she said, tapping the folder. I believe my experience could be valuable in implementing this vision across the Columbus flagship store. I studied her for a moment. Barbara, I appreciate your willingness to embrace this new direction. I'll share your thoughts with the transition team, but I want to be clear. My role doesn't include making hiring decisions. I understand. She hesitated, then added with visible effort. Your products are really quite remarkable. I've been using the samples you left at Thanksgiving. The results are impressive. The compliment, however strategically motivated, was still startling. Coming from Barbara. Thank you. That means a lot. Our conversation continued for nearly an hour, with Barbara displaying more interest in Pure Petal's journey than she had shown in the previous 3 years combined. When we parted, something had shifted between us, not quite warmth, but perhaps the beginning of mutual respect. The following weeks brought intense activity as the acquisition finalized and implementation plans accelerated. I immersed myself in the Bellamy's redesign, working closely with architects and merchandising teams to create a beauty department that would showcase clean, sustainable brands in an educational, experiential environment. In early August, the full organizational chart for the restructured Bellamy's was released. Barbara's name appeared as Regional Beauty Director for the Midwest, a promotion that would give her oversight of cosmetics departments across 6 states. Diane, however, was notably absent from the list. Mark called his mother immediately upon seeing the announcement. Congratulations on the promotion. That's wonderful news. Thank you, she replied, her voice containing a note of genuine pleasure. It seems my experience was valued after all. What she didn't say, what neither of us mentioned, was the obvious connection between her sudden embrace of clean beauty principles and her unexpected promotion. Barbara was nothing if not adaptable when it served her interests. 2 weeks later, Bellamy's held an all-hands meeting to formally introduce the new executive team and outline the company's revised direction. As a key partner in the beauty strategy, I was invited to attend and briefly present the department redesign concept. The corporate auditorium was filled with employees from all levels, their expressions ranging from curious to anxious. I spotted Barbara in the front row, her posture perfect as always, notepad ready. She acknowledged me with a slight nod as I took my seat on the stage with other presenters. The CEO of Willow Tree Holdings opened the session with an overview of the acquisition and vision for Bellamy's future. We're not here to dismantle what makes Bellamy's special, he assured the audience. We're here to build on its strengths while addressing the challenges of modern retail. Various executives presented their sections of the strategic plan until, finally, Tom introduced me. Our beauty department transformation is a cornerstone of Bellamy's revitalization. To share this vision, I'd like to introduce Rachel Wilson, founder of Pure Petal Skincare, and our strategic partner in reimagining the beauty experience. As I approached the podium, I caught Barbara's expression, a complex mixture of pride, resignation, and perhaps a touch of irony. She understood exactly what was happening. The daughter-in-law whose business she had dismissed as a hobby was now helping shape the future of her company. Thank you, Tom, I began, surveying the room. Bellamy's has a proud history of bringing quality beauty products to its customers. Our goal is to honor that legacy while embracing the values today's consumers demand: transparency, sustainability, and proven efficacy. I outlined the planned changes: dedicated clean beauty sections, educational displays explaining ingredients, and exclusive brands available only at Bellamy's, including Pure Petal's expanded line. This transformation isn't just about changing products, I concluded. It's about changing the conversation around beauty. With the expertise of Bellamy's experienced team members and the innovation of our new brand partners, we'll create something truly exceptional. As I returned to my seat, applause filled the auditorium. The CEO retook the podium to wrap up the presentation and announced that employees would receive detailed department-specific information in the coming days. One final note, he added, your first paychecks under Willow Tree Holdings will be distributed next Friday. You'll notice some changes to the format, but rest assured that all compensation and benefits remain as previously structured. After the meeting, Barbara approached me in the lobby, her expression unreadable. That was an impressive presentation, she said. Very comprehensive. Thank you. I'm excited about the direction we're taking. She nodded, then asked with careful casualness, will you be involved in the ongoing implementation? Yes, especially for the flagship stores. We'll be working closely together on the Columbus location. I see. She hesitated, then added, Mark mentioned you might join us for dinner this weekend. I'd like to hear more about your vision for the department. I'd be happy to discuss it, I replied, surprised by the invitation. As she turned to leave, she paused. One question, Rachel. The paychecks the CEO mentioned, will they have your name on them? As part of Willow Tree's executive team? I smiled slightly. Not exactly. But Pure Petal is now a significant part of Willow Tree's portfolio, so indirectly, yes, I'm part of the ownership structure that signs your checks. Barbara processed this information with remarkable composure, only a slight tightening of her jaw betraying any reaction. How interesting life can be, she said finally. I look forward to our dinner conversation. As she walked away, I couldn't help but reflect on the extraordinary journey of the past year. What had begun as a small business born of passion had transformed not just my professional life, but my personal relationships as well. Barbara would likely never be warm or effusive, but her worldview had expanded to recognize my capabilities, even if that recognition came through self-interest rather than genuine admiration. The following Friday, as promised, the first Willow Tree paychecks were distributed to Bellamy's employees. That evening, I received a text from Barbara, the first she had ever sent me directly. My new business cards arrived today. Regional Beauty Director, thank you for your part in this. Perhaps we all have different capacities after all. Attached was a photo of her paycheck stub. At the bottom, the authorized signature line clearly showed Willow Tree Holdings, Pure Petal Division, along with the corporate logo that incorporated elements of Pure Petal's branding. I showed the message to Mark, who laughed in disbelief. Is this my mother actually acknowledging your success? In her own way, I replied. Progress comes in small steps. What are you going to say back? I thought for a moment, then typed, looking forward to working together on the new beauty experience. Your expertise will be invaluable. Professional, respectful, but clear about our new dynamic. Exactly the tone I wanted to set moving forward. Barbara had mocked my small business, dismissing my ambitions and questioning my capabilities. Now, her paycheck bore the imprint of my success, not as an act of revenge, but as the natural outcome of believing in my vision when others didn't. As I set my phone down, I realized that the greatest victory wasn't seeing my company name on Barbara's paycheck. It was knowing that I had built something meaningful, something that would touch thousands of customers with products I believed in. That my mother-in-law now recognized the value of what I had created was simply a satisfying footnote to a much larger story of perseverance, vision, and unwavering belief in my own capacity for success. The first Bellamy's flagship store renovation, unveiled in October, just 6 months after my fateful meeting with Olivia Martinez in that coffee shop. Standing in the gleaming new beauty department with its custom lighting and sleek displays, I could hardly believe how far we'd come. Pure Petal products occupied the central island, our signature lavender and sage packaging creating a visual anchor for the entire space. Around us, carefully selected clean beauty brands completed the curated experience we'd designed for Bellamy's customers. Barbara arrived precisely 15 minutes before the scheduled ribbon-cutting ceremony, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit with the Bellamy's insignia pin fastened to her lapel. As regional beauty director, she had overseen the final merchandising details, working alongside our team with surprising adaptability. "Everything looks perfect," she said, inspecting the displays with her characteristic attention to detail. "The training sessions went well yesterday. All staff members can properly explain the Pure Petal formulation philosophy. Thank you for ensuring that," I replied, genuinely appreciative. Whatever her personal feelings might be, Barbara was undeniably professional. The customer education component is crucial for this relaunch. She nodded, adjusting the angle of a sign by a fraction of an inch. "The Columbus market has responded enthusiastically to our pre-opening promotions. We're expecting a significant turnout today." The formality in her tone remained, but the open hostility that had characterized our early interactions had dissolved. Our relationship had transformed into something resembling mutual respect, if not warmth, a business-like appreciation for each other's contributions to the project. "Rachel!" Tom called, approaching with several Willow Tree executives. "The CEO wants some photos with you and Barbara before the doors open. The marketing team is calling it the perfect partnership. Longtime Bellamy's expertise combined with Pure Petal's innovation." As we posed for corporate photographs, Barbara leaned close and murmured, "They're referring to us as the perfect partnership. Imagine that." The subtle note of irony in her voice made me smile. Life takes unexpected turns. Indeed it does. She smoothed her jacket. "Mark tells me Pure Petal's quarterly revenue exceeded projections by 30%. The Willow Tree distribution network has accelerated our growth timeline significantly," I acknowledged. "I'm not surprised," Barbara said, her expression carefully neutral. "The formulations are exceptional. I've received numerous compliments on my skin since switching to your regimen." Coming from Barbara, this was equivalent to effusive praise. "Thank you. That means a lot." The conversation was interrupted as the CEO gathered everyone for the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Cameras flashed as local business reporters documented the event, the first major renovation under Willow Tree's ownership, heralding the new direction for the struggling department store chain. "This transformation represents our vision for Bellamy's future," the CEO announced to the assembled crowd. "A perfect blend of the trusted Bellamy's experience our customers value, enhanced by innovative partnerships with brands like Pure Petal Skincare." As the ceremonial scissors sliced through the ribbon, I caught sight of Diane Peterson standing at the back of the crowd. After being passed over in the reorganization, she had taken a position with a competitor across town. Our eyes met briefly before she turned and walked away without acknowledgement. The doors opened to waiting customers, and the department quickly filled with curious shoppers eager to explore the redesigned space. I watched as Barbara seamlessly shifted into her element, directing staff and engaging with longtime customers, who recognized her from years of service. Whatever her initial resistance to change, she had embraced the new direction with characteristic efficiency. "Quite a transformation," a familiar voice said beside me. I turned to find Olivia Martinez, surveying the scene with approving eyes. "Olivia, I didn't know you were coming." "I wouldn't miss it. This is what success looks like, Rachel. Seeing your vision materialize on this scale." She gestured toward the Pure Petal display where customers were already testing products. "From garage workshop to department store centerpiece in less than a year. You should be proud." "I couldn't have done it without your guidance," I said sincerely. That coffee shop meeting changed everything. You were ready for the opportunity. Many entrepreneurs aren't. She nodded toward Barbara, who was demonstrating a product application technique to an attentive customer. Your mother-in-law appears to have adapted well to the new paradigm. Better than I expected, I admitted. She's actually become one of our strongest advocates within the Bellamy's organization. Olivia smiled knowingly. Success has a way of changing perspectives. Speaking of which, I've been following Pure Petal's expansion. The Japanese distribution deal is particularly impressive. It's still in early stages, but the initial market response has been positive. Asian consumers are especially responsive to our botanical formulation approach. Our conversation was interrupted by an associate informing me that a beauty editor from a national publication had arrived for her scheduled interview. The remainder of the opening day passed in a blur of media engagements, customer interactions, and operational troubleshooting. By closing time, sales had exceeded projections by 45%, with Pure Petal products leading all categories. As the last customers departed, Barbara approached with a detailed sales report. The staff performed admirably today. Your training protocols were clearly effective. Thank you. They're a talented team. You've assembled excellent people. She hesitated, then added with uncharacteristic hesitation, I've been thinking about Thanksgiving. Last year was not my finest moment. Mark mentioned you're hosting at your new place this year. The memory of that disastrous Thanksgiving dinner, where Barbara had so dismissively mocked my little hobby, seemed like a lifetime ago. In the intervening year, I had secured major investment, partnered with a leading beauty conglomerate, and helped reshape the very department store where Barbara had built her career. Yes, we thought it would be nice to host in the new house. Mark and I had recently purchased a spacious Craftsman in a quiet Columbus neighborhood, another tangible result of Pure Petal's success. I'd like to contribute something, Barbara said carefully. Perhaps I could bring dessert? The irony wasn't lost on either of us. Her offering to bring dessert after dismissing my homemade pies the previous year. That would be lovely, I replied. She nodded, then reached into her handbag and withdrew a small envelope. I also wanted to give you this, a small token of my appreciation for... She paused, seemingly searching for the right words. For what you've accomplished. Surprised, I accepted the envelope and opened it to find a vintage silver compact, elegantly engraved with floral patterns. It's beautiful, I said, genuinely touched by the unexpected gesture. It belonged to my grandmother, Barbara explained. She was also an entrepreneur, a milliner in the 1940s when women rarely owned businesses. I think she would have appreciated your determination. I had no idea, I said, carefully examining the compact. You've never mentioned her. Perhaps should have. Her shop failed during the war, and she had to take a position in someone else's business. I grew up believing that security came from established companies, not from building something yourself. She straightened her jacket with a practiced gesture. It seems I may have internalized that lesson too thoroughly. The admission, as close to an apology as Barbara was likely to offer, hung between us for a moment before she continued. In any case, I thought you might appreciate having this. Entrepreneurial women should support one another, even across generations. Thank you, I said simply, understanding the significance of the gift. I'll treasure it. November arrived. With unseasonable warmth, bathing our new home in golden afternoon light as we prepared for our first Thanksgiving as hosts. The Pure Petal headquarters had expanded to a renovated warehouse space in Columbus's Arts District, housing our product, development lab, fulfillment center, and corporate offices. A team of 20 full-time employees now managed operations that had once been handled solely from my garage workshop. The dining table looks beautiful, Mark commented, surveying my carefully arranged settings. Unlike Barbara's formal crystal and china from the previous year, I had opted for a warmer aesthetic: handcrafted stoneware plates, linen napkins, and centerpieces of locally grown flowers and herbs. Not too casual? I asked, adjusting a place card. We had invited a small gathering: Mark's parents, Olivia and her husband, Tom and his partner, and Jason Kim, who had become something of a mentor since our initial investment meeting. It's perfect, Mark assured me. Authentic and welcoming, just like Pure Petal. The doorbell rang precisely at 5 o'clock. Barbara and her husband Richard stood on the porch, she holding a bakery box while he balanced a bottle of wine. Welcome. I greeted them, accepting the dessert. Please come in. Barbara glanced around the entryway, taking in the architectural details of our 1920s home. The renovation work is impressive, she observed. The original woodwork has been beautifully preserved. We were fortunate to find craftspeople who specialized in historic restorations, I explained, leading them into the living room where a fire crackled in the refurbished hearth. Richard, a soft-spoken accountant who rarely featured in Barbara's social machinations, settled comfortably into conversation with Mark about the home's history. Barbara, meanwhile, followed me into the kitchen under the pretense of helping with final preparations. I brought the chocolate torte from Hartfield's, she said, placing the box on the counter. And these as well. She withdrew a small container from her handbag. The lavender shortbread cookies you sent for my birthday, I thought they paired nicely with the chocolate. The acknowledgement of my homemade gift and her decision to incorporate it into her contribution represented another small step in our evolving relationship. That's thoughtful, thank you. She glanced around my spacious kitchen with its professional-grade appliances and custom cabinetry. This is quite different from your apartment kitchenette where you started mixing your formulas. The business has grown a bit since then, I acknowledged with deliberate understatement. Indeed. Barbara adjusted a napkin with characteristic precision. Richard mentioned that Willow Tree's quarterly report highlighted Pure Petal as their fastest-growing acquisition. The stock price apparently jumped 3 points after the announcement. Before I could respond, the doorbell signaled the arrival of more guests. Soon the house filled with conversation and laughter as our diverse group of colleagues and family members mingled in the living room. Olivia and Barbara discovered a shared interest in art collection, while Tom and Richard became engrossed in a discussion about architectural preservation. As we moved to the dining table for dinner, I found myself seated between Jason and Barbara, with Mark at the head of the table. The contrast to last year's Thanksgiving, where I had been deliberately positioned away from the main conversation, couldn't have been more pronounced. I've been meaning to ask, Barbara said as she unfolded her napkin, how the Tokyo launch is progressing. My counterpart at the international division mentioned some exciting developments. The initial rollout exceeded expectations, I replied, still slightly disoriented by Barbara's newfound interest in Pure Petal's operations. Japanese consumers are particularly responding to our transparency regarding ingredient sourcing. Not surprising, she observed. The Japanese beauty market has always valued provenance and purity. I noticed you've incorporated specialized packaging for that market. The conversation flowed naturally from there into global beauty trends, with various guests contributing insights from their respective areas of expertise. When the topic turned to Bellamy's continued transformation, Barbara spoke with genuine enthusiasm about upcoming initiatives. The Columbus flagship's success has created a template for all our locations, she explained to Olivia. We're implementing the clean beauty concept nationwide, with Pure Petal as the anchor brand. The customer response has been remarkable, Tom added, particularly from demographics that traditionally shopped elsewhere. Speaking of which, Jason interjected, the preliminary numbers for holiday sales projections just came in. Pure Petal gift sets are trending as the top beauty item across all Bellamy's pre-orders. That's wonderful news, Mark said, raising his glass. I think that calls for a toast to partnerships that exceed expectations. As glasses clinked around the table, I caught Barbara's eye. The woman who had once dismissed my business aspirations with such condescension was now part of the ecosystem that had grown around Pure Petal's success. Her worldview had expanded, perhaps not through genuine enlightenment, but through the pragmatic adaptation that had always been her strength. Later, as guests lingered over dessert in the living room, Barbara approached me by the fireplace. "I've been meaning to ask," she said quietly. "Have you considered expanding beyond skincare?" The Pure Petal approach could translate well to complementary categories. "We're exploring several possibilities," I acknowledged. "Home fragrance and wellness products are natural extensions of our botanical focus." She nodded thoughtfully. "The home fragrance market is experiencing significant growth, particularly in the clean, sustainable segment. Bellamy's home department could provide an interesting cross-merchandising opportunity." "That's actually something we've been discussing with the product development team," I admitted, surprised by her insight. "Good. I've drafted some thoughts on potential synergies." Barbara reached into her handbag and withdrew a slim folder. Nothing formal, just some observations from the retail perspective. I accepted the folder, genuinely touched by the effort it represented. "Thank you. This could be valuable input for our planning process." "I'm glad to contribute." She hesitated, then added, "I've been thinking about our conversation last year, about different capacities. Perhaps I was measuring by the wrong metrics." The admission, subtle though it was, represented a significant shift in Barbara's perspective. "We all have different strengths," I offered. "The beauty of collaboration is how those different capacities can complement each other." She nodded, a faint smile softening her usually composed features. "Indeed. Speaking of which, Diane called yesterday. She's apparently struggling at Hamilton's. Their traditional approach isn't adapting quickly enough to market changes." "That must have been a difficult conversation," I observed, remembering how Diane had participated in Barbara's dismissal of Pure Petal. "Illuminating," Barbara corrected. She asked if there might be opportunities at Bellamy's, given our successful rebranding. The slight emphasis on the word conveyed volumes about Diane's belated recognition of the clean beauty movement. "And what did you tell her?" "That Bellamy's values forward-thinking perspectives. That sometimes recognizing change requires humility." Barbara sipped her wine thoughtfully. She didn't appreciate the response. I couldn't help but smile at the subtle shift in power dynamics. Barbara, once so aligned with Diane's conservative outlook, had evolved beyond her former colleagues' rigid thinking. "Change isn't easy for everyone," I observed. "No," Barbara agreed, "but sometimes necessary. Pure Petal has demonstrated that quite effectively." Our conversation was interrupted as Mark called everyone together for a group photograph in front of the fireplace. As we arranged ourselves, I found myself positioned between Barbara and Olivia, the skeptic who had become an ally, and the mentor who had first recognized my potential. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. December brought exponential growth for Pure Petal as holiday sales surpassed even the most optimistic projections. The Bellamy's partnership proved particularly successful, with our exclusive gift sets selling out across all locations by mid-month. Emergency production runs were scheduled to meet demand, and the manufacturing partners I had so carefully selected demonstrated their value through flawless execution under pressure. January marked 1 year since my coffee shop meeting with Yue. Olivia, the conversation that had transformed everything. To commemorate the anniversary, I invited her to tour our new headquarters and preview the expanded product line scheduled for spring launch. "I'm impressed," she said, examining the development laboratory where chemists tested new formulations. "You've built a remarkable infrastructure in a very short time." "With considerable guidance," I acknowledged. "Your insights shaped our strategic direction at every stage." "I merely opened a door," Olivia countered. "You walked through it with exceptional clarity of purpose." As we continued the tour, She asked about the Japanese expansion, the Bellamy's partnership, and our future growth strategy. Her questions were incisive as always, pushing me to articulate the vision that had evolved alongside Pure Petal's success. "And what about Barbara?" she inquired as we settled in my office overlooking the Arts District. "Has that relationship continued to evolve?" "In surprising ways," I admitted. "She's become one of our strongest advocates within the Bellamy's organization. Her retail expertise has actually proven valuable for our merchandising strategy." "People adapt when properly motivated," Olivia observed with a knowing smile. "Speaking of which, I have a proposition for you." She outlined a new initiative she was developing, a formal mentorship program for female entrepreneurs in the beauty and wellness space. "I'd like you to serve as a mentor," she explained. "Your journey from kitchen formulator to industry leader provides a valuable perspective for women just starting their businesses." The invitation represented a full-circle moment, from seeking Olivia's guidance to being invited to guide others. "I'd be honored," I replied, "though I still have much to learn myself." "The best mentors always do," she assured me. Sharing. Your experience, including the challenges and setbacks, can be invaluable for those navigating similar paths. The memory of Barbara's dismissive attitude at last year's Thanksgiving dinner flashed through my mind. How her skepticism had nearly derailed my confidence before it had fully formed. "Yes," I agreed. "Both the supporters and the skeptics shape our journey." February brought another milestone as Pure Petal expanded into international markets beyond Japan, with distribution agreements signed for South Korea, Singapore, and Australia. The business that had begun in my garage now supported 35 full-time employees and had become a case study in successful beauty brand development, featured in industry publications and business school curricula. As part of Willow Tree's executive team, I now participated in quarterly strategic planning sessions at their corporate headquarters in Chicago. During one such meeting, the CEO announced plans for an innovation accelerator to nurture emerging brands within the clean beauty and wellness categories. Rachel's journey with Pure Petal demonstrates the value of identifying and supporting promising concepts early in their development, he explained to the assembled executives. "We want to institutionalize that approach across all our divisions." As the meeting concluded, I found myself in conversation with the Senior Vice President of Human Resources, discussing staffing for the new accelerator initiative. "We need someone with both corporate experience and an understanding of entrepreneurial thinking," she explained. "Someone who can bridge those worlds effectively." "That's a unique combination," I acknowledged. "Indeed. But we may have identified the perfect candidate." She consulted her tablet. Barbara Collins, currently serving as Regional Beauty Director. Her performance evaluations show exceptional adaptability and innovation within established systems. I worked to keep my expression neutral. "Barbara certainly understands both the corporate structure and the challenges facing emerging brands." "Excellent. Your endorsement carries significant weight, given your work together on the Bellamy's." Transformation. Later that evening, I shared the conversation with Mark over dinner at our favorite restaurant. "Mom leading an innovation accelerator?" he repeated, clearly stunned. "The same woman who thought Pure Petal was just a hobby?" "People evolve," I pointed out. "Barbara has demonstrated remarkable adaptability over the past year." "Still," he marveled, "it's quite a transformation from dismissing small brands to nurturing them." "Experience is a powerful teacher," I said, thinking of my own journey. Sometimes seeing something succeed against your expectations forces a reevaluation of long-held beliefs. The following week, Barbara called to share the news of her interview for the accelerator position. "It's quite an opportunity," she said, uncharacteristic excitement coloring her voice. "Developing new brands from concept to market. Essentially what you did with Pure Petal, but within the corporate structure." "You'd be excellent in that role," I replied sincerely. "Your retail experience combined with your understanding of The Bellamy's integration gives you a unique perspective. I appreciate that, she said after a brief pause, particularly given our history. The acknowledgement of our complex past hung between us for a moment before she continued. They've asked me to develop an onboarding program for new brands entering the accelerator. I was hoping you might be willing to contribute. Perhaps share your experience transitioning from independent startup to corporate partnership. I'd be happy to, I agreed. The challenges and opportunities of that transition are substantial. Excellent. I'll include that in my presentation. She hesitated, then added, It's ironic, isn't it, that I might now be nurturing businesses similar to what Pure Petal was when we first discussed it. Life takes unexpected turns, I observed. Indeed it does. Richard commented just yesterday how remarkable it is that the company he once dismissed as your kitchen chemistry project now represents a significant portion of our retirement portfolio through Willow Tree stock options. The practical acknowledgement of Pure Petal's financial impact was quintessentially Barbara, measuring success in tangible, monetary terms rather than emotional validation. Yet it represented genuine recognition nonetheless. March brought Barbara's official appointment as director of the Willow Tree Innovation Accelerator, a position that would have her identifying and developing promising beauty and wellness startups. Exactly the type of business she had once dismissed as unsustainable. The irony wasn't lost on either of us when she called to share the news. They've approved my proposal for the mentorship structure, she explained, her voice carrying the efficient enthusiasm she reserved for professional achievements, including your participation in the onboarding process. I'm looking forward to it, I replied. When does the first cohort begin? June. We're reviewing applications now. Over 300 submissions for 10 positions. Her tone shifted slightly, becoming more personal. I find myself thinking differently about these small brands now, seeing the potential rather than just the limitations. That's valuable perspective, I acknowledged. Both the possibilities and the challenges are real. Yes, she agreed. I've been reflecting on our conversation last Thanksgiving about different capacities. Perhaps capacity isn't fixed, but expandable, with the right guidance and opportunity. The philosophical observation was uncharacteristic for Barbara, whose worldview had always seemed rigidly practical rather than contemplative. I believe that's true, I said. For businesses and for people. Indeed. She paused, then continued with careful precision. I've been meaning to ask, would you consider a formal advisory role with the accelerator, beyond the onboarding contribution we discussed? Your perspective would be valuable. The request represented another evolutionary step in our relationship. Barbara actively seeking my input rather than dismissing my perspective. I'd be honored, I replied, though my schedule is somewhat limited with Pure Petal's continued expansion. Of course, we could structure it quarterly, perhaps aligned with the strategic planning sessions you already attend at headquarters. As we finalized the details, I found myself reflecting on the extraordinary transformation of the past 16 months. Not just in Pure Petal's growth from garage startup to international brand, but in the fundamental shift in my relationship with Barbara. The woman who had once dismissed my business aspirations with such confidence now sought my guidance for nurturing similar ventures. April brought the official launch announcement for the Willow Tree Innovation Accelerator, with Barbara featured prominently in press materials as its founding director. The business media noted the strategic alignment with Pure Petal's successful integration into the Willow Tree portfolio, positioning the accelerator as an institutionalization of that approach to brand development. When the inaugural cohort was announced in May, I was invited to the welcome reception at Willow Tree headquarters. The 10 selected brands represented diverse categories within clean beauty and wellness, from sustainable packaging innovations to specialized formulations for underserved demographics. Barbara greeted me in the reception area, impeccably dressed in her signature style, but with subtle updates that reflected current trends. "Rachel, thank you for coming. The founders are particularly excited to meet you. Your journey with Pure Petal has become something of a case study for them." "I'm happy to share our experience," I replied, following her into the elegantly appointed conference room where the selected entrepreneurs mingled with Willow Tree executives. "Everyone," Barbara announced, her voice carrying with practiced authority. "I'd like to introduce Rachel Wilson, founder of Pure Petal Skincare and a key strategic advisor to our accelerator program." As the founders approached with questions and comments, I caught Barbara observing the interaction with an expression I hadn't seen before, something approaching pride, though not entirely for herself. When the formal presentations began, she introduced each selected company with genuine enthusiasm, highlighting the innovative aspects that had earned them a place in the program. "The accelerator represents Willow Tree's commitment to nurturing the next generation of beauty and wellness brands," she explained to the assembled group. "Drawing on our experience with successful integrations like Pure Petal, we've developed a pathway for emerging companies to access the resources of a major corporation while maintaining their entrepreneurial spirit." As she outlined the program structure, I noted how thoroughly she had incorporated lessons from Pure Petal's journey, from product development support to retail strategy and international expansion planning. The accelerator essentially codified the path I had navigated with considerably more difficulty just a year earlier. When the formal presentation concluded, Barbara joined me at a quiet corner table. "What do you think?" she asked, a note of uncertainty unusual in her typically confident demeanor. "It's impressive," I replied honestly. "You've created a comprehensive support system for these brands." "Thank you." She arranged her notes with characteristic precision. "I've tried to anticipate the challenges they'll face based on your experience with Pure Petal, the transitions that proved most difficult, the resources that would have been most valuable earlier in your journey." The thoughtfulness of her approach and the implicit acknowledgement of Pure Petal's path as a valuable model touched me unexpectedly. "They're fortunate to have this structure," I said. "Building these relationships independently required considerable persistence." Barbara nodded, her expression reflective. "I've been thinking about our first conversation about Pure Petal at Thanksgiving dinner 2 years ago. How dismissive I was of the possibilities." She met my gaze directly. "I was wrong. Not just about your business specifically, but about the potential of entrepreneurial ventures in general." The admission, offered without qualification or excuse, represented a remarkable evolution in Barbara's perspective. "We all have our blind spots," I offered. "Experience changes our viewpoints." "Indeed." She glanced toward the room where the founders continued networking with Willow Tree executives. "These entrepreneurs remind me of you in those early days. The passion, the vision, the determination, despite external skepticism." "Including yours," I noted gently. "Especially mine," she acknowledged with uncharacteristic frankness. "Though I prefer to think I've evolved beyond that limited perspective." "You certainly have," I agreed, thinking of her journey from dismissive critic to active champion of emerging brands. As we rejoined the main group, I observed Barbara engaging with the founders, asking insightful questions, offering practical suggestions, demonstrating genuine interest in their concepts. The woman who had once declared that some people are built for success and others aren't, was now actively supporting individuals she would previously have dismissed. Later that evening, as Mark and I discussed the event over dinner, he marveled at his mother's transformation. "I never imagined Mom would become an advocate for startups," he said, shaking his head in disbelief. "She built her entire identity around corporate stability and predictability." "People can surprise us," I replied, thinking of Barbara's unexpectedly philosophical comments about expandable capacities, especially when given the opportunity to see things from a different perspective. June marked the official launch of Pure Petal's expanded product line, which now encompassed skincare, body care, and wellness products united by our botanical formulation philosophy. The Bellamy's flagship stores featured elaborate displays showcasing the collection, with Barbara personally overseeing the merchandising strategy for the Columbus location. During the launch event, I found myself standing beside her as customers eagerly explored the new offerings. "The presentation is beautiful," I commented, noting the thoughtful arrangement that guided shoppers through a complete Pure Petal experience. "Thank you," she replied. "I wanted to create a journey that reflects your formulation philosophy, how each product complements the others in a holistic approach to well-being." The insightful articulation of Pure Petal's core concept demonstrated how thoroughly Barbara had come to understand and value the brand she had once dismissed. "You've captured it perfectly," I acknowledged. She adjusted a display item with characteristic precision. "The Accelerator founders are studying this launch as a case study in brand expansion. Your growth trajectory provides valuable learning opportunities for them. I hope our experience can help smooth their path," I said, watching as customers filled their baskets with Pure Petal products. "Though some challenges simply come with the territory of building something new." "Indeed." Barbara's expression softened slightly. "I've been meaning to tell you, Diane interviewed for a position with the Accelerator last week." The news surprised me. Diane? The same Diane who described small beauty brands as quaint but ultimately futile? The very same. A hint of amusement colored Barbara's voice. She's apparently reconsidered her position on emerging brands, given their increasing market share. "And how did the interview go?" I asked, curious about this latest development. "Not well," Barbara replied, with uncharacteristic directness. Her understanding of contemporary beauty trends remains somewhat outdated, and her dismissive attitude toward entrepreneurial thinking hasn't evolved as circumstances have changed. The assessment could easily have described Barbara herself just 2 years earlier, a fact neither of us acknowledged directly. "That's unfortunate," I said diplomatically. "Adaptability is increasingly valuable in this industry." "Precisely." Barbara nodded toward a customer eagerly discussing a Pure Petal serum with a sales associate. "Those who recognize changing currents can navigate them successfully. Those who resist often find themselves swimming against the tide." The philosophical observation and the implicit acknowledgement of her own evolution hung between us as we continued observing the successful launch unfold around us. The journey from that Thanksgiving dinner, where she had mockingly dismissed my little hobby, to this moment of shared professional success, represented an extraordinary transformation for both of us. July brought the first quarterly review of the Willow Tree Innovation Accelerator, with Barbara presenting results to the executive committee. As a strategic advisor, I attended the session, watching with genuine admiration as she detailed the progress each selected brand had made under the program's guidance. "The accelerator model is proving even more effective than projected," she concluded, gesturing toward charts showing sales growth and market penetration for the participating companies. "By leveraging Willow Tree's infrastructure while preserving each brand's unique identity, we're creating sustainable growth opportunities that benefit the entire portfolio." The CEO nodded approvingly. "Barbara, this is exceptional work. Your ability to bridge corporate resources with entrepreneurial thinking has created something truly valuable here." "Thank you," she replied with characteristic composure. Though I must acknowledge the inspiration provided by Pure Petal's integration experience. Rachel's journey offered invaluable insights into how emerging brands can maintain their integrity within a larger corporate structure. The generous acknowledgement, offered in a corporate setting where Barbara might easily have claimed full credit for the accelerator's success, represented another step in her remarkable evolution. As the meeting concluded, Barbara approached with a folder containing the quarterly review materials. "I've been meaning to ask," she said, her tone shifting from professional to personal. Would you and Mark be interested in hosting Thanksgiving again this year? Last year's gathering was quite wonderful. The request represented yet another small acknowledgement of our changed relationship, Barbara ceding the traditional hosting role she had always fiercely maintained. We'd be happy to, I replied. Perhaps we could make it an annual tradition. I'd like that, she said simply. And perhaps this year, I'll bring homemade dessert rather than something from Hartfield's. The subtle reference to her dismissal of my homemade contributions 2 years earlier wasn't lost on either of us. That would be lovely, I acknowledged. As she turned to leave, Barbara paused. One more thing. The Accelerator program will be featured in next month's industry publication. They've requested an interview with both of us, discussing how Pure Petal's experience informed the Accelerator model. I'd be happy to participate. Excellent. Their angle is particularly interesting. They're calling it Full Circle Mentorship, from startup to corporate leadership. She met my gaze with uncharacteristic openness. It seems we've both come full circle in unexpected ways. Indeed, we had. The woman who had once mocked my small business now championed similar ventures within a corporate structure that had evolved to recognize their value. And I, who had once sought simply to prove her wrong, had discovered purpose far beyond. That initial motivation, building a brand that positively impacted customers while creating opportunities for others following similar paths. Unexpected journeys often lead to the most meaningful destinations, I observed. Barbara nodded, a genuine smile softening her, usually composed features. Indeed, they do. And sometimes the most valuable lessons come from those we least expect to learn from. As she walked away, I reflected on the extraordinary transformation we had both experienced. From antagonists to allies, from skeptic and dreamer to collaborative partners with shared purpose. Barbara had mocked my small business, dismissing its potential with such confidence. Now her professional identity and financial security were directly tied to its success, her paycheck bearing the imprint of the very venture she had once ridiculed. But the greatest victory wasn't the reversal of our positions or the validation her changed perspective represented. It was the realization that true success transcended personal vindication, that building something meaningful could transform, not just circumstances but perspectives, creating value that extended far beyond the balance sheet to touch lives, reshape thinking, and open new possibilities for others. The world of beauty, with all its emphasis on external transformation, had ultimately facilitated something far more profound, an evolution of understanding that had enriched us both in ways neither could have anticipated when that first jar of lavender face cream was so dismissively set aside at Thanksgiving dinner. 18 months after the Willow Tree acquisition, I stood in the newly renovated corporate boardroom of Bellamy's headquarters. The walls, once adorned with traditional retail awards and dated photographs, now featured elegant displays of Pure Petal's product line, alongside charts showing the remarkable transformation of the company's beauty department sales. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Columbus's skyline glittered in the afternoon sunlight, a view I never imagined I'd be enjoying from this position. "The quarterly numbers are in," Tom announced, sliding a folder across the polished table. Pure Petal has outperformed projections by 32%. The clean beauty section is now Bellamy's highest-performing department across all locations. I opened the folder, the figures confirming what we had all suspected. The transformation that had begun with my small business in a converted garage had revolutionized an entire retail chain. How are the exclusive formulations performing? The lavender collection is our top seller, followed closely by the sage serum. We're having trouble keeping them in stock, even with increased production. A soft knock on the door interrupted our discussion. Barbara entered, impeccably dressed as always in a tailored navy suit, her silver blonde hair arranged in its characteristic perfect style. But something had changed in her demeanor over these months, a subtle softening around the eyes, an almost imperceptible relaxation in her typically rigid posture. "The board meeting will begin in 15 minutes, she announced, her efficiency undiminished despite her evolved perspective. "They'll want to discuss the international expansion timeline." As regional beauty director, Barbara now oversaw the implementation of clean beauty principles across all Bellamy stores, the very approach she had once dismissed as a passing trend with no sustainable market potential. Her expertise in traditional retail combined with her gradual embrace of innovative approaches had created a uniquely effective leadership style that bridged corporate structure and entrepreneurial thinking. "Thank you, Barbara," I replied, gathering my presentation materials. "Is the Asian delegation attending today?" "Yes, they arrived this morning. They're particularly interested in the Japanese market strategy." She hesitated briefly, an unusual break in her typically seamless efficiency. "Your cultural adaptation approach impressed them considerably. The integration of local botanical traditions with our core formulation philosophy was quite insightful." Coming from Barbara, this constituted effusive praise. Her acknowledgement of my business acumen, an aspect of my capabilities she had once dismissed with such confidence, represented remarkable evolution in our relationship. "Cultural relevance is essential for authentic connection," I offered. "Traditional wisdom combined with contemporary science creates stronger formulations than either approach alone." She nodded, the philosophy resonating beyond mere product development. "Indeed, integration rather than opposition, a principle with broader applications than I initially recognized." This subtle acknowledgement of her transformed perspective, offered without defensiveness or qualification, demonstrated extraordinary growth from the woman who had once been so rigidly certain of her unchangeable expertise. As we made our way toward the main boardroom, Barbara maintained her characteristic efficiency in reviewing meeting logistics, but with occasional insights that revealed her evolved understanding of Pure Petal's approach. The woman who had once mocked my little hobby across her Thanksgiving dinner table now advocated for its principles in corporate strategy sessions. The boardroom filled quickly with executives from various divisions, along with the visiting Japanese retail partners, who would be crucial to our international expansion. I caught Mark's eye as he slipped into the room. His architectural firm had been contracted to design the Tokyo flagship store, incorporating sustainable materials and biophilic elements that aligned with Pure Petal's philosophy. The CEO opened the meeting with customary updates before turning the floor over to me for the international strategy presentation. As I outlined our approach to the Japanese market, emphasizing cultural adaptation while maintaining core brand principles, I noticed Barbara adding supportive data points and contextual retail insights that strengthened the overall proposal. "The Pure Petal integration represents our most successful department transformation in Bellamy's history," the CEO noted as my presentation concluded. "We're implementing similar approaches across all product categories based on this model." The acknowledgement of Pure Petal's influence beyond the beauty department highlighted how thoroughly our approach had transformed Bellamy's corporate thinking. What had begun as a cautious trial in a single section had evolved into guiding philosophy for the entire retail chain. "Rachel and Barbara have created an extraordinary partnership," he continued, gesturing toward us both. "Combining innovative product development with strategic retail implementation. The results speak for themselves." As the meeting progressed to operational details, I observed Barbara with quiet appreciation for her remarkable evolution. Though her fundamental nature remained precisely organized and detail-oriented, her capacity to recognize value in approaches different from her own had expanded dramatically. The dismissive skepticism that had once characterized her assessment of entrepreneurial ventures had transformed into nuanced understanding of how innovation and tradition could strengthen each other. After the board meeting concluded, Barbara approached with a leather portfolio tucked under her arm. "Do you have a moment to discuss the department reorganization?" she asked, her typical efficiency softened by what appeared to be unusual hesitation. "Of course," I replied, curious about this uncharacteristic approach. We moved to a small conference room adjacent to the boardroom, its windows offering the same spectacular city view. Barbara placed her portfolio on the table with characteristic precision and opened it to reveal organizational charts and implementation timelines. "The clean beauty expansion requires structural adjustments," she began, efficiency returning to her tone. "The CEO has approved a new departmental configuration that better integrates traditional cosmetics and innovative product categories." The documents outlined a comprehensive reorganization of Bellamy's beauty departments across all locations, creating dedicated clean beauty sections featuring Pure Petal prominently, while incorporating educational elements about ingredients and sustainability. The strategy clearly reflected balanced integration of Barbara's retail expertise and Pure Petal's brand philosophy. This approach maintains necessary operational consistency while allowing appropriate regional adaptation, she explained, indicating specific elements of the proposal. Different perspectives, strengthening rather than complicating implementation. As she turned to the final page in her presentation, I noticed something unusual. A signature line at the bottom of the organizational chart bearing both Bellamy's corporate logo and Pure Petal's distinctive branding. "The revised structure establishes co-leadership of the beauty division," Barbara explained, her composure momentarily yielding to what appeared to be genuine enthusiasm. "Strategic decisions requiring dual authorization, traditional retail, expertise and innovative brand perspective creating balanced implementation approach." The significance suddenly became clear. Under this new structure, Barbara's departmental authority would be formally paired with Pure Petal's philosophical oversight, creating partnership that required both our approvals for major initiatives. More importantly, this integrated leadership meant Barbara's position now fell partially under Pure Petal's organizational framework. In essence, her paycheck would now bear my company's name and my signature as authorizing executive. The woman who had once mocked my small business across her Thanksgiving dinner table would now see my name on her paycheck. Not through vindictive corporate maneuvering, but through natural evolution of collaborative partnership that genuinely benefited both our approaches. Barbara, ever perceptive, noted my recognition of this arrangement. "The integrated authorization structure ensures philosophical consistency across implementation variations," she explained with characteristic efficiency. "Different perspectives strengthening operational outcomes." The genuine appreciation in her tone, acknowledging value in our complementary approaches without defensiveness or reservation, demonstrated extraordinary evolution from her initial dismissive assessment. What had begun as antagonistic opposition had developed into balanced partnership based on mutual respect for distinct but complementary strengths. "It's a thoughtful integration," I acknowledge sincerely, honoring both established expertise and innovative perspective. "Indeed," she agreed with visible satisfaction, "precisely the balanced approach we've found most effective throughout our collaborative work." Before we could discuss further implementation details, her phone chimed with a calendar reminder. "We have the vendor meeting in 5 minutes," she noted, gathering her materials with characteristic precision. As we walked together toward the meeting room, I reflected on the extraordinary journey our relationship had traveled. The mother-in-law, who had once dismissed my business acumen with such confident certainty, now operated within structure where her professional authority was formally integrated with the very approach she had mocked. The vendor meeting focused on sustainable packaging innovations being implemented across all Pure Petal products and, increasingly, throughout Bellamy's house brands. As various proposals were presented, I observed how naturally Barbara and I had fallen into complementary assessment patterns. Her analytical precision identifying practical implementation challenges, while my entrepreneurial perspective recognized innovative potential that might otherwise be overlooked. The bamboo component meets sustainability criteria while providing necessary structural integrity, she noted, examining a prototype container with characteristic thoroughness, though production scaling requires additional verification. The eyes? Regenerative harvesting approach aligns perfectly with our brand philosophy, I added, highlighting elements Barbara's practical assessment hadn't emphasized. And customers respond positively to the natural texture variations. Our combined evaluation, practical implementation considerations alongside values-based innovation priorities created assessment more comprehensive than either perspective alone could have provided. This balanced approach had become the hallmark of our transformed relationship, creating partnership that strengthened rather than threatened our distinct professional viewpoints. As the meeting concluded and vendors departed with clear direction for next development stages, Barbara consulted her immaculate planner. The Tokyo store design review is scheduled for tomorrow morning. Mark mentioned architectural adjustments to accommodate regional customer flow patterns. He's incorporated fascinating elements from traditional Japanese gardens, I shared, appreciation for my husband's work evident. Creating tranquil spaces within the retail environment that encourage mindful product exploration. An insightful adaptation, Barbara acknowledged with genuine respect, honoring cultural context while maintaining brand consistency. Her recognition of Mark's design philosophy, approaching retail spaces with nuanced cultural awareness rather than standardized corporate templates, represented another dimension of her evolved perspective. The woman who had once approached all situations with rigid adherence to established practices now appreciated thoughtful adaptation and contextual sensitivity. We parted in the lobby, Barbara heading to a department manager meeting while I returned to my office to prepare for the following day's design review. As I organized materials, my phone buzzed with a text from Mark. "Dinner still on for tonight?" Mom confirmed she'll join us. These monthly family dinners had evolved alongside our professional relationship, from Barbara's formerly orchestrated performances of hostess perfection to more relaxed gatherings that actually allowed genuine connection. The transformation in these personal interactions paralleled our professional evolution, creating space for authentic engagement rather than mere performance of expected roles. "Absolutely," I replied, looking forward to it. That evening, as we settled at our favorite restaurant, a farm-to-table establishment that aligned with Pure Petal's sustainability values, I observed Barbara with quiet appreciation for how thoroughly her perspective had expanded beyond her formerly rigid boundaries. Though she remained meticulously put together, subtle changes reflected her evolved approach: a slightly softer hairstyle, accessories with more organic elements, occasionally relaxed posture suggesting reduced need for constant perfect presentation. The international expansion timeline appears appropriate, she noted, as conversation turned toward business developments, though cultural adaptation requirements necessitate careful implementation sequencing. The Japanese market research revealed fascinating nuances, I agreed. Their traditional botanical knowledge offers valuable perspectives we hadn't fully considered. Indeed, Barbara acknowledged with characteristic precision. Different cultural approaches creating more comprehensive understanding than singular perspective alone could provide. The philosophy perfectly captured our parallel journeys, finding strength through integrated viewpoints rather than competitive opposition. Barbara's evolution from dismissing entrepreneurial thinking to recognizing its valuable contributions matched my progression from rejecting traditional expertise to appreciating its essential foundation. As dinner continued, our conversation moved naturally between professional developments and personal matters. Mark's architectural projects, upcoming store openings, community initiatives Pure Petal had launched to support local botanical education. Throughout these exchanges, I noticed how Barbara's communication style had maintained its fundamental clarity while incorporating more openness to undefined possibilities and emergent opportunities. The department reorganization appears well received, she observed as dessert arrived. Staff appreciation for clearer integration between traditional and innovative approaches exceeds projections. The characteristic framing of personal observation through data-oriented language remained pure Barbara, though her willingness to acknowledge emotional components alongside practical outcomes represented meaningful evolution in her assessment approach. Change is easier when people see their contributions valued within new frameworks, I suggested, honoring established expertise while creating space for fresh perspectives. Indeed, she agreed with visible satisfaction. Integration, rather than replacement, creating stronger outcome than either approach alone. As Mark shared anecdotes about the Tokyo store design process, I caught Barbara watching me with an expression I hadn't seen during our early antagonistic relationship, something approaching genuine appreciation. The woman who had once viewed my business aspirations with dismissive skepticism now regarded my contributions with authentic respect, recognizing value and perspective different from yet complementary to her own. Later that evening, as Mark and I drove home, he observed what I had been contemplating throughout dinner. Mom's really changed, hasn't she? Not just professionally, but in how she engages with ideas different from her initial viewpoint. We all have, I acknowledged, thinking of my own evolved understanding. Finding strength in perspectives we once might have dismissed. Like you appreciating Mom's systematic approach to implementation, and her recognizing your intuitive leaps often identify valuable opportunities. Exactly, I agreed. Different viewpoints creating more comprehensive understanding than either alone could provide. The philosophy that had transformed our professional relationship had extended to personal dynamics as well, creating genuine connection where antagonism had once dominated. Barbara's journey from mocking my small business to seeing my name on her paycheck represented not just professional evolution, but fundamental expansion in how she engaged with perspectives different from her own. As we arrived home, I reflected on the extraordinary distance we had traveled. From that uncomfortable Thanksgiving dinner where Barbara had so confidently dismissed my little hobby, to our current collaborative partnership guiding international expansion of the brand she had once mocked. The most meaningful victory wasn't seeing my name on her paycheck, but recognizing how thoroughly our perspectives had expanded through challenging engagement with each other. Finding strength through integration rather than opposition, creating outcomes far more valuable than either approach alone could have achieved. Looking back at my journey from that small garage workshop to international success, I've come to understand that the true measure of achievement isn't found in vindication or proving others wrong. It's in discovering strengths you never knew you possessed and building connections that transform both your business and your life. When Barbara first mocked my little hobby across her Thanksgiving table, I felt diminished, doubting my vision despite my determination. That moment could have become a festering wound, a reason to abandon my dreams in favor of the proper job she thought I needed. Instead, it became the catalyst that pushed me to prove, not just to her, but to myself, that my vision had value worth fighting for. The path wasn't easy. There were countless late nights formulating products, calculating margins that seemed impossibly thin, and facing rejection from those who couldn't see the potential I knew existed. Each setback tested my resolve. Each no challenged my confidence. But something within me refused to surrender the dream of creating products that aligned with my values while solving real problems for customers who shared those values. What I couldn't have anticipated was how this journey would transform not just my professional life, but my personal relationships as well. Barbara's evolution from skeptic to advocate wasn't a surrender, but an expansion. Her fundamental strengths remained intact while her perspective grew to embrace possibilities she once couldn't see, and my own growth mirrored hers in unexpected ways as I learned to value the structured expertise I had initially dismissed in my entrepreneurial enthusiasm. Perhaps the most powerful lesson in our story isn't about business success at all, but about the extraordinary capacity humans have for transformation when we remain open to perspectives different from our own. The walls we build between different viewpoints, traditional versus innovative, corporate versus entrepreneurial, systematic versus intuitive, often prevent us from discovering the remarkable strength that exists in their integration. If you're facing your own skeptics today, the voices that dismiss your vision as impractical or unsustainable, remember that their limitation of perspective doesn't define your potential for success. Use their doubt not as a reason to retreat, but as motivation to clarify your purpose and refine your approach. The most meaningful achievements often emerge from the very dreams others are quickest to dismiss. At the same time, recognize that those who challenge your thinking aren't always obstacles to overcome. Sometimes they're offering valuable perspective that, when integrated thoughtfully with your vision, creates something far stronger than either viewpoint alone could produce. The courage to listen and adapt doesn't diminish your original purpose. It enriches it with dimensions you might never have discovered otherwise. Success isn't measured by proving skeptics wrong. It's found in creating something of genuine value that transforms lives, including sometimes the lives of those who doubted you most. My greatest victory wasn't seeing my name on Barbara's paycheck, but witnessing how our mutual challenge of each other's perspectives created space for both of us to grow beyond our initial limitations. Your journey may not lead to international expansion or corporate partnerships, but its true value will always be measured by how it transforms both you and those around you. The small business that begins in a garage, a spare bedroom, or on a kitchen table carries within it not just the seed of potential financial success, but the possibility of profound personal evolution for everyone it touches. So begin. Start where you are with what you have. Trust the vision that others may not yet see, and remain open to the possibility that those who challenge you most might someday become your strongest allies, transformed by the very success they once couldn't imagine was possible. The greatest journeys aren't about destinations, but transformations, not just of circumstance, but of perspective. And sometimes the most powerful words you'll ever hear aren't, "I was wrong," but "we've created something extraordinary together that neither of us could have built alone." What I've learned through this extraordinary journey is that true resilience isn't about weathering storms unchanged. It's about allowing yourself to be transformed by challenges while maintaining your core purpose. The entrepreneur who emerges successful isn't the same person who began the journey. They're wiser, more adaptable, and often capable of seeing value in perspectives they once dismissed. When I think about those early days mixing formulations in my garage, I remember the pure passion that drove me forward despite Barbara's skepticism. That passion wasn't wrong. It was the essential spark that ignited everything that followed. But passion alone couldn't have built what Pure Petal eventually became. It took the integration of my innovative vision with Barbara's structured expertise to create something truly revolutionary. This balance doesn't come easily. Our instinct when faced with opposition is often to dig deeper into our original position, to prove ourselves right and others wrong. The harder path, but ultimately, the more rewarding one, is remaining open to the possibility that differing perspectives might contain elements of truth that could strengthen your approach. I've seen this pattern repeatedly while mentoring emerging entrepreneurs through our accelerator program. Those who succeed most profoundly aren't necessarily the ones with the most groundbreaking ideas or even the strongest business plans. They're the ones who maintain unwavering commitment to their core vision while demonstrating remarkable flexibility in how that vision manifests. They listen to feedback without being derailed by it, integrating useful insights while staying true to their fundamental purpose. This delicate balance between conviction and adaptability isn't just the key to business success, it's a powerful approach to life itself. The relationships that thrive longest aren't those where people remain unchanged, but where they grow together, allowing their perspectives to evolve while maintaining their essential nature. Barbara and I didn't just create a successful business partnership. We created a model for how seemingly opposing viewpoints can strengthen rather than threaten each other. The woman who once saw only limitations in my approach eventually recognized its value, while I came to appreciate the structured implementation her expertise provided. Neither of us abandoned our fundamental strengths. We expanded them through mutual influence. If you're standing at the beginning of your entrepreneurial journey, remember that the skeptics you face today may someday become your greatest advocates. Not because they surrender their perspective, but because both of you grow beyond your initial limitations to recognize the value each brings to the table. The path won't be linear. There will be moments of doubt when you question everything, days when giving up seems like the only rational choice. In those moments, remember that persistence isn't about stubbornly refusing to change course. It's about maintaining commitment to your purpose while remaining flexible about the path that leads there. Perhaps most importantly, success rarely looks exactly like what we initially envision. Pure Petal became something far more significant than my original dream of a small sustainable skincare line. The integration of my formulation philosophy with Barbara's retail expertise created impact beyond anything I could have imagined while mixing those first batches of lavender cream. This willingness to let your vision evolve doesn't diminish. It expands its potential impact. The entrepreneur who insists their initial concept must manifest exactly as first imagined often misses opportunities for growth that could transform a good idea into an extraordinary one. So as you build your dreams, hold your vision with both passionate conviction and gentle openness. Be unwavering in your commitment to the values at its core, while remaining receptive to perspectives that might enhance its expression. And remember that those who challenge your thinking most directly today may someday become the partners who help elevate your vision beyond what either of you initially thought possible. The journey from garage workshop to international impact wasn't just about proving Barbara wrong or seeing my name on her paycheck. It was about discovering that when different strengths collaborate rather than compete, the outcome transcends what either could create alone. That's the ultimate entrepreneurial lesson. Not just building successful businesses, but building transformed perspectives that continue creating value long after any single product has reached its market potential. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.